Hello, good person. I'm James Hands from Awaken Therapy. Today I want to talk with you about traumas of omission. And what omission means is when something's left out, when something's not given, when something's withheld, when something's denied. And so we've spoken before about things like emotional neglect and how big an impact that has, how traumatic that can be to not get the emotional connection, engagement, support that we need, especially as a child in our development, in our growing up. Other forms of omission can be things like physical neglect. Obviously that's very serious when children are not given the physical care they need. It might be food and clothing, shelter, basic things like that. Omission can also be the lack of protection. Where's the protection? Where's the care when children are so small and vulnerable? And so this whole area, there's becoming a lot more awareness around it, which is very good, because historically people have just been aware of traumas of what they call commission, and commission is to do. So when someone's acted out on a person, so let's say the child's been sexually abused, physically abused, attacked in some way, these are traumas that come from commission or active abuse, and in a way they're more obvious. I remember a therapist of mine many years ago saying, well, if we're attacked like that, and let's say someone's broken our arm as a child, as awful and as traumatic as that can be, at least we can see it, we can feel it, we can touch it. In a way it's a bit easier for our system to deal with it. And we certainly know consciously that we don't like it, that it's wrong, that it's terrible. But when it's a trauma coming from omission, when we've been denied, when a parent has done the silent treatment for days, I heard from a client who said sometimes her mother would just not talk to you for weeks. And now these kind of withholding of attention and care, as an adult you'd think, oh, that's just annoying and I don't want to be with that person anymore. But as a child, when we're dependent, we're trapped really, we're stuck in this position of being tortured really by that withholding. And so trauma that comes from omission can actually, in my opinion, be harder to deal with. In my professional experience, it's often something that people aren't even aware of. It takes a bit of work to realise that, oh, that actually caused all these problems, not being given that support. We're a bit more aware of things like, the absent father, a father who's been away working too much, just physically absent, and the problems that can come from that. It's even more complex though, isn't it, when parents might be in the home, they might be around a lot, but they're psychologically not available, emotionally they're not available. It's like they're just not present, energetically they're not present. And a lot of trauma comes from that kind of neglect history, where parents are maybe very self-absorbed, they might be quite narcissistic, they're just doing their own thing, and the kids just have to somehow fit in around that. I heard a story recently, someone, going on holidays, and the parents would just sit around the pool drinking, and really the kids would just have to fend for themselves. Is that a great family holiday? I don't think that's a family holiday at all. It's more a parent's holiday, and the kids just having to adapt to that, fit in. So trauma's coming from this not getting what we need. Trauma trauma is stress, it's stuck energy, so all the hurt, all the pain that comes from not being given what we need, it can become very hidden, it can become very buried, because we bury the energy anyway, we suppress the memory anyway. Trauma is that stuck energy, but because it's come from the lack of something, it's not as obvious. Let's talk about betrayal, a very deep layer that we get to in our work as we're working through childhood difficulties and traumas, and this is not necessarily the worst of the worst cases of child abuse and stuff. This is often in just your average dysfunctional family. Every family is a bit dysfunctional, but let's just talk your common garden variety dysfunction. There can be a lot of trauma in that because there isn't the engagement, there isn't the care. Parents might be self-absorbed. Parents might be just so wounded too. If they haven't done their work, if they haven't dealt with their issues, what will happen is it will be subconsciously passed on. And that means they might be acting out the way they were neglected. They might act out how they were not protected. And of course, this just passes the problems down to the next generation. It kicks the can down the road, and unfortunately then that child or those children then have to deal with it. And this can go back generations. In emotion code work, we find things that can go back, 20 generations or even more. And so these problems, these unresolved issues, that can be why the parent behaves in those rejecting or neglectful ways. Certainly doesn't excuse it, but it can help us to understand it, and that's an important part of the healing as well. So if you have awareness around this, I did a quiz on my website, do you have hidden childhood trauma? It looks at some of the issues that are caused by that, or some of the problems in our life that can be symptomatic of hidden trauma. And hidden trauma tends to be traumas of omission. If we're actively abused, it's much, much harder to fully suppress the memory of that, and so there tends to be more awareness. But these other types of not getting what we need, traumas, stresses, abuses, you could call it, you tend to be much more buried. Take the quiz if you haven't had a look at that before, and when you go through that, it'll show you some of the symptoms that can indicate this kind of history. So reach out at any time. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me. That just helps me know what sort of material to share, and if I can help in any way, have a look at the website. There's lots of free resources there. There's a few paid products, and of course consulting's always available as well if you feel to reach out if it's time to deal with your traumas of omission.